Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chasing a Murderer, and we are on part 71 of Life Beyond the Grave. If you haven't heard about this story, well, it's based on a Mormon mother who was married 5 times. She had 3 children, 2 biological children and 1 adopted special needs son that were found buried in her 5th husband's backyard. Well, 2 of the 3 children. Her oldest child, Colby Ryan, is alive and thriving. And I've been trying to uncover the truth of this story because she had been let go so long to destroy so many lives. There's a lot more going on in this story than what's being told. All I can tell you is anybody that walks across Lori's path and you get in her way, well, she's going to try to destroy you. And that's what you're going to learn a lot about in part 71. And we're trying to figure out how in the world did she get away with such crazy behavior for so long. So right now we're in 2018 and we are learning that Lori is reading a few books, not a lot, just a few books by the author Chad Daybell. She's reading a few books that are written by Julie Rowe. They are considered fictional writers, okay? But it's based on their visions and predictions of the future, which they say is real. They are predicting the second coming of Jesus Christ, and this isn't something new. However, Lori Vallow in 2018 claims that an angel, the angel Moroni, Jesus Christ himself, is speaking to her at the temple. And she's finding out some very shocking information. She says that they are telling her that she's meant to be one of the first women prophets in her religion. She's also meant to be a warrior of God, a great messenger and a goddess of the 144, the Church of the Firstborn. Lori has spent a lot of her time in the temple. She said there isn't enough time spent there, though she's spending quite a bit of time there, according to witnesses like her nephew Zach, other family members, and friends. She even mentioned it in an audio that we listened to earlier that, she wasn't getting enough time at the temple. No matter how much time she's spending there, it's just not enough. And it seems that she has become obsessed with spending every moment that she could speaking to higher powers, deities, spirits, and working with the dead. And also, she's meeting a lot of big names like Jason Mao, people who are writing book series and who are actually involved with conferences that are getting quite popular that are attached to preparing the people. She's met one of the main names that we will talk about in this story, Melanie Gibb, already. And she's headed to Utah pretty soon, right? I'm going to leave out a few names simply because I think these people have been through enough. But Lori, her niece Melanie Boudreau, her friend Melanie Gibb, they are becoming quite a tight group. Brandon Boudreau, Melanie Boudreau's husband, notices that his wife Melanie, who didn't enjoy going to church, is actually gaining a new passion in Christ. And he notices it's ever since his wife has been spending a lot more time with her aunt Lori. Melanie Boudreau is also reading books that are written by people like Chad Daybell, Mike Strad, Julie Rowe, and listening to podcasts like Julie Rowe. Chad and Julie, however, they were pretty close around July of 2018. And Julie is actually, well, you got to remember, she got her most attention around 2014. And she kind of starts stepping away from that light, and then she'll come back, and then she steps away and then comes back. She really believes in these things that she's teaching, but also she's not really liking the negative attention that she's getting from it. And so, that's has a lot to do with her wishy-washy ways. Melanie Boudreaux, Alex Cox, and Lori, well, they're all pushing Chad's books. They're also pushing Julie Rowe's podcast. Well, at least up until this time. We know a lot of this because of some friends like April Raymond, who says that she sees Lori from time to time. She comes to her in Hawaii for visits, and she's coming, kind of off and on during this time. And this is after Lori had lived in Hawaii and then head back to the mainland. Also, Chad and Julie, well, they're kind of looking new directions to get their stories out. Both are actually considering making media documentaries, and they are actively seeking prospects to make this happen. But at some point in 2018, Julie changes her mind about all these documentary things, and pretty soon, Chad, too, he's going to kind of change. I want to mention it just in case this is going to happen later. He will also want to change his direction and his writing. Now, other people in this group around this time, David Warwick is actually being pushed by Preparing the People. Who's over Preparing the People? That would be Mike and Nancy James. And they seem to really adore David Warwick. They believe that he's a very honest visionary. So they believe he's a very honest man. Now, something that I found interesting that I believe Lori took some information from David Warwick. He actually talks about how long you should do fastings, because he does these fastings to help him reach better revelation. So the longer that he fasts, the better his future telling becomes. So I wanted to make sure that you guys are aware that Lori is very aware of many of these people attached to this networking system and pushing end-day prophecy. These people are very famous among the prepper group that are around, 10,000 or so. It could be more, but it's 10,000 that are showing support pretty openly. Something else I believe that Lori Vallow is very interested in is how Julie Rowe is pushing women within the LDS to be more open and alert to what is happening in other realms as well as here on Earth. Julie's podcasts often, refer to abuse, and sometimes suggesting that women continue to be abused here on Earth as well as on the other side of the veil. And guys, I guess I could share, this is also telestial realms, other dimensions, and she kind of suggests Satan abducts souls. What I have learned is Lori suggests, and there is talk and teachings saying that the only way to be free from a Satan possessing your body is through death and atonement. So Lori's kind of hearing this stuff, and you got to remember, she really loves these podcasts. She has them playing in her car. When she's in her car, she's making her family listen to them, and we'll talk about that shortly. Julie mentions that many families carry a curse and can get rid of this through ordinances / burning. Contracts with Satan can actually be broken. That's according to Julie, but she doesn't really elaborate on the detail. Something very interesting, I think, also played a huge role in a lot of Lori's belief system is how Julie calls on to mortals of this earth to gather for the 144,000, to gather its armies. So this is really some major stuff here, guys. I mean, these are armies. These aren't just little, let's gather for a camp, let's farm. This is to prepare for war. This is to fight. And she tells her listeners, well, do it at any cost in order to restore the king's throne. No, I'm not trying to blame Julie Rowe for all this, but I am suggesting that Lori will get a lot of her ideas here. Julie is saying to people that are listening that she hopes that they can get the courage up that they need to in order to do the job God has given them, and that soon you will be freed from the darkness of this planet. Julie also mentioned something I thought was very interesting, and that suffering is necessary. This is something familiar, isn't it? That we'll hear Lori Vallow kind of say in future podcasts about the children. What I have learned is Julie does talk to people one on one, but she's very careful who she talks to. She's very, how do I say it, leery who she talks to. And I haven't found where Lori Vallow is one of those people, though we have learned that Lori has reached out to Julie with no response. In fact, she reaches out to Julie to let her know that God has let her know that she needs to tell Julie that Julie is definitely one of God's messengers. Now, something else Julie Rowe is big in at this time is giving people their identity in their past lives and who they are today. So, this is something that is happening before Lori and Chad get together here. So, just know, what does Lori and Chad have in common? Well, they both admire Julie Rowe and her teachings, at least for a little bit longer. Even, let's just say that they're kind of pull apart, but Chad and Lori will continue to use what they're learning from Julie. Now, I want to mention here Colby Ryan. He's not at his house a lot around this time. He has quit high school. He got his GED. He's been moving around. He's lived with his uncle Adam. He's lived with his mother. And then he got married to his wife. Once he's married to his wife, he will not be that in his siblings and mother's life very often. Colby will even claim that he had no idea during this time, that his mother was a fan of Chad Daybell, like a lot of other people do at this time. But also, remember, Lori's not real happy with Colby's wife, and Colby's wife is definitely not a fan of Colby's mother or family. So from this time forward, you can basically understand that Colby really doesn't know much what's going on in that household, the Vallow household. Chad continues to push the idea of gathering spots in the second coming and how it's approaching quickly. And we have learned some of those gathering spots he believes are the places God says to gather. St. George, Rexburg, BYU, Salt Lake City. And there's no way that Melanie Gibb could be part of all these events and not be aware of the gathering that these people are talking about 24/7 and referring to this 144,000 to everyone in this circle. Based off my research, at least for the information we have at this time, because you can always get new information, Chad seems to really enjoy the attention he has longed for ever since he was in high school and he failed at sports. I mean, he wanted to be the sports guy that stood out and got all the ladies. But he writes that's one of his biggest disappointments is he wasn't able to be that sports star. However, now he's a way older adult and he's becoming this leader of a gathering, the preparation of an apocalypse, kind of cult-like. And according to a few people that know Chad Daybell, well, there are women that kind of adore him, that are kind of coming to him at least. And a lot of people believe that he seemed to have a bit more feelings for Julie Rowe than just a business partner and friend. And so we're just not real sure about that because we're not sure if Julie really returned that affection. You'll run across in this story, wherever you go, a lot of speculation saying that maybe there was more going on between Chad and Julie but Julie has never said that. She says he's tried to hit on her, but nothing about a relationship. One thing I believe is most likely true is the fact that Chad does seem to look up to Julie. He seems to be interested in the energy code teachings that she teaches, and about the vibrations and the energies, the healing, the spirits that she includes in her classes. So, that's no doubt in my mind. Now, the one thing we are learning is that these people, especially Lori, people like Lori, people who accept the messages, they're treated as if they will be leaders. So remember that. And something that is the most popular teaching during this time are the premortal lives. Everyone wants to know who they were and where they have been. And all I could find was a handful of people that are actually, telling these people that they have the ability to tell them who they were in a past life and maybe even a future life. And I would love to know, and only Julie knows this, if Lori Vallow ever reached out to her about past lives. Maybe she can share that with us. We have learned that Lori seems to follow her favorite stories, lock them in her mind, then use them as her own in the right time at the right place. You need to remember this. She has already used Chad's quotes, Julie's quotes, and I'm sure there's others. Something else that stood out to me was the fact that Lori seems to be following Joseph Smith's stories. When he met Moroni, he was granted special privileges from God in heaven. And Lori believes that she is equal to Joseph Smith, but in the female form. As to the exact timeline when she believes this, it's somewhere in this time frame. Lori truly believes it is the woman's turn to rule heaven and earth. She also becomes more interested in Satan and demons. And those interests, well, they're growing daily. But what she understands of these things is nothing like what they learn at church. Demons that walk freely, bodiless, waiting on the first opportunity to steal a body, tossing the original soul away, or jumping into this body through death. When someone dies, there's a small window in which a spirit or / demon can enter this body and take up residence and steal the identity as long as it can. So remember that, guys. Melanie Gibbs says after meeting Lori, she will be convinced that Moroni called her to help them with the gathering of other women and to prepare for the hellstorm that's coming. This just doesn't make sense to me because we know that Melanie Gibb is actually part of preparing the people and these groups that are teaching these things before Lori Vallow even comes along. Chad's podcast in September of 2018, he talks about glimpses through the veil. Now remember, he's had 2 near-death experiences in which he believes toward the veil or the curtain between the mortal world and the spiritual world. And he's being presented as an expert who has been on that side where the spirit's realm, where they live, what they talk about, and what they have to say to you guys. He also wants to give you a glimpse of what it's like after you die. So if you're afraid of death, I bet this would be a great podcast to hear, especially for people like Lori Vallow, who has already admitted that they had a lot of fear about the end days that were approaching. And Chad has a lot to share about the afterlife. He says we must embrace our time here on earth as mortals and understand what happens after we are gone. And again, this is something arranged by Mike and Nancy James, along with their regional leaders like Melanie Gibb. And by this time, dreams and vision workshop classes, well, they're filling up. And that's I'm going to give you a timeline on that. That's around September of 2018. Now, here's a rumor. This is only a rumor, but I'm going to include it just in case. But it is said that Jason Mao, before this trial, had run into Chad Daybell at the temple, and he told Chad that, or actually Chad told him that one of the three Nephites, Anne Moroni, said that Chad would meet a special woman. I hope I said that right. I just wanted to include that for you guys in case. Also around this time, Zach is still spending a lot of time with his Aunt Lori and their family. He's around 17 years old. And I really can't remember if I included this because it's somewhere in this timeline. We couldn't get the exact time, but it's right in here where Lori is actually telling Zach and her kids that if they say a cuss word or watch bad movies, there is an evil spirit that is constantly screaming in their face. It just screams at them. So that was interesting. Lori's time at the temple increases to around 8 hours a day eventually. And when she's at home, well, she's not happy. She doesn't want to go home. She feels that when she goes home, there's just nothing there for her. But when she's at the temple, she feels like she's in heaven. So she's without her children in the temple. She's without her husband. She's without her family. And I'll have to tell you guys, it's something about the time when she started going to the temple that I believe her demeanor with her immediate family begins to change more than usual, along with her obsession with podcasts like Julie Rowe and Days. And this is where I was going to tell you guys, according to some of her family members, when they were riding in the car with Lori, they were driving somewhere, they didn't play music. Instead, she would put on LDS podcasts. So I got this source from Justin Lum, well, this is ages ago, where Julie said during this time that her and Chad are friends. She didn't view him as a cult member or a cult leader during this time. He wasn't like that. At least he wasn't like that around her. On the other hand, she says during this time he was conducting small gatherings at people's private homes, but she never attended any of those. The places that he was meeting was Utah and Idaho. So Tammy Daybell must have felt so alone during this time as his events are starting to increase. He's not, he's at home less and less. And Chad's projects and events, the schedule, it gets more busy every day. By October 3rd, Lori was making new connections to this Preparing a People group. We're going to have some environment changes, guys. She had mentioned that she was no longer a sweet, innocent, good Lori, that now she is a take charge fighter, a warrior of God, and that she was ready to fight for God. The same woman who actually attacked or ordered attacks on her third husband, Joseph Ryan, said she would avoid fights at all costs once upon a time. So early October into late October, you can see her confidence grow and her visions, the messages that she believes that she has to share with people from heaven itself. And the sad part is people are actually feeding this monster, as I've mentioned before. Lori is very interested in going to one particular event hosted by no other than Nancy and Mike James, featuring Chad Daybell, Jason Mel, Hector Salsa, a few others. It's a Preparing a People event for the weekend of October 26th of 2018. There will be big surprises and special events, they announce. And around this time, Chad is really making his, way as to being a face that is more recognizable among the preparedness community and preparing the people while they really open the doors that he has only dreamed of. Hundreds of people are looking upward at Chad, admiring his position and stance. They envy and follow him, adoring him. And because of this, there's going to be a lot more shows or events planned in January of the new year, including Chad Daybell. Now, you've already learned that Lori Vallow, who meets with Moroni, who give her the priesthood blessing and power, wants to meet Chad. And this is going to be so devastating. And if you remember, Lori has an idea. She wants to write a book, but not just any book. How women like her are seeking power. She is already preparing and writing in a journal. She was already well aware that Chad Daybell was a book publisher and seems to know exactly what she wants when she wants it. In an interview with Nate Eaton later, Melanie Gibb says that after she and Lori hit it off, they were taking girl trips to different places. One of those places would be the Preparing the People conferences, and one of them specifically being St. George at the end of October, which is around October 26, 2018, where Chad was speaking. And we will hear that there are people that refer to Lori as a groupie of Chad, who was infatuated by Chad, and even Melanie Gibb would kind of suggest that. For me, I kind of viewed it differently after getting to know Lori, and this is just my opinion here. I felt that Lori had an idea of what she wanted from Chad, what she could get from Chad, and so that's what she was after. For her, writing a book is exciting. This book would be about her after all, and her ideas of what the future might bring and how it's connected to God and how she would be a messenger. That was kind of like Julie Rowe. Now, Lori plans this trip with several women. We're not going to mention all of them. I'm going to try to cut it short as I can. I wanted to do more details, but let's try to cut it down some. So she has Melanie Gibb, Melanie Boudreau, several other girls, plus her family members that are going to this event with her to meet Chad Daybell. Lori's telling them, we're going to this conference because, whatever reason she wants to go. But I believe that in her own mind, she's thinking, I'm going to meet this guy. And here's the thing. Some people say that Chad Daybell, when he speaks, he has a charisma. I don't see it. I don't get it. Never have. And a lot of others don't, but they're saying he has it. So let's say he does. When he's speaking, he has this charisma. And a lot of people seem to like what he has to say and share. I was going to go more into what they said at this conference, and I'm going to share a video here. But I'm going to have to skip some of the stuff I had originally planned for you guys. Lori is attending this Preparing the People conference. She is finally getting to meet Chad Daybell this day, and she knows it. You can go to True Hidden Crime to get the entire video. He begins with telling where he's from.
So here we are in St. George. I'm happy to be in St. George. I grew up in Utah County.
And we're skipping a bit here, but he's going to start talking about his near-death experiences. One where he had actually jumped off a cliff, and he could see that his body, when it hit the water, the spirit stayed above him while his body continued to float deeper underwater.
1, 2, 3, yeah, just kind of flailing, and when I hit, it was like hitting concrete, and it just felt like I broke my neck, honestly. That was my first indication. But what really happened is my body went deeper than my spirit. And so I was like 3/4 out of my body. It's like I came out through my head. And I looked around, and it was like a plane of white light. And just an amazing experience. I felt so peaceful and calm, and there were little particles of light that attached to my body, like they were just rushing at me. But within a few seconds, my body and spirit went back together. I later learned it wasn't the best fit. For 30 years, I was kind of off.
And so this is the time that Chad Daybell will actually have gained that gift, the ability to walk between two worlds, that of the living and that of the dead. I don't know if you guys remember, the first part of the series we went into as to why he started writing his futuristic books. If you don't remember, here's a recap.
But a few years later, we went on a family vacation to La Jolla, California. This La Jolla Cove. And in the center of the picture there, you can kind of see some black rocks that go out. And my brother and I went out on the very tip of that at low tide. And as the tide started to shift, as we were looking for shells and things, a gigantic wave came and just plastered me. This is the same cove, a different angle, but that's about what that wave looked like. I was out on that tip and then just looked up, and there was this wave right there. They just call it a rogue wave. Comes out of nowhere and smashed me, and I was sure I was going to die. And I was actually right. I did die. Suddenly I got hit by the wave, but then I was just standing up to found myself just upright. I was a spirit. I was in an orange room, and well, not an orange room, but it was just an orange glow around me. And suddenly I saw my grandpa Keith Daybell, who was my father's dad. He had an army uniform, kind of a symbol of who he was. And he had with him his grandfather, Finity Daybell. And as Grandpa Keith talked to me, Finity was watching my body. It was floating around in the water, just kind of bouncing around, actually. And so I felt they knew they had a certain amount of time they could talk to me. And Grandpa Keith started telling me that in the future I would write books based on my children's future. And he showed me like a panorama that just flipped through dozens of scenes, like a video wall, just showing me dozens of scenes of what happened to my children. And it was a great blessing. I soon returned to my body and kind of coasted to shore. My dad rushed to me and they took me to the hospital. And I had to get some stitches and everything, but I bounced back, and a few years later I started writing that series. And so that's how the Standing in Holy Places series began. It follows three families, and I've kind of combined a couple of the children, but it really is the story of what will occur to my children in a general sense.
So remember, Chad Daybell at the very beginning believed that his family, well, especially his children, played a huge role in these future comings or even apocalyptic devastation, where they gather or prepare or even fight. At this time, anyways. And Lori Vallow is sitting in the crowd right now, probably excited, thinking, what can she do to draw him in? That's what I'm thinking. I mean, you guys draw your own conclusion. Of course, she has her truth. But based off of what we know about her, it seems that she had a plan. And I'm sure she just was on this, the very edge of her seat, waiting for this preparedness, the speakers to be finished, and everyone to be able to meet and start chatting. Chad starts actually talking about the topic of devastations that are coming to this area that they're in and the area surrounding it. He believes that Rexburg is one of the safe houses, safe places to be during that time. He has seen visions of temples and all these other things being built in that area. Lori is a true believer in all this, and she also has an idea that she is going to be part of this 144,000 that she knows that all of these guys are gathering and trying to put together. If you guys remember that, that will help you understand things a lot better.
The Hoover Dam was cracked in an earthquake. There's some volcanic activity. Las Vegas is suddenly out of water, and the hydroelectric plants aren't working the way they should, and people are panicking. They are going to start coming this direction. One issue, though, is that let me find my place. Okay. Well, we all love going down to Mesquite in Las Vegas, but that route through the Virgin River Gorge is going to be destroyed. You look at some of the bridges, and that's not going to hold up under a 7.0 earthquake.
He starts to give extreme detail of all the devastations and trials that people will face when these earthquakes hit. How the gas will be a very important necessity, of course, but there'll be nowhere to get any. So imagine if you're sitting in this audience and you believe that these visions are true. I think at one point, I believe Lori believed in this. And then at some point, that changes. And she thinks of this in a different way. Maybe I think her interest was to start writing books and gathering people. And it was for other reasons than what the original thought or reason was for. Just remember, both Lori and Chad, they were very interested in climbing the ladders within their religious community, but they could only go so far. I think preparing the people really opened doors and opportunities and, wow, a lot of excitement to people like Lori and Chad. I can hear some of the far right side of the Mormon preppers, because a lot of the preppers in the Mormon groups, they were more on the far right side of the politics scale. I'm not saying that this has anything to do with the right, but that's just where some of these people fit in. Purpose for saying that is I knew for years and years and years that group of people, well, they always had this thing where they were saying that we were going to be invaded by foreign forces. They've always been worried about that. They've been worried about the chips that would be implanted. This has gone on before 2008. So this is basically that same group of people at another level. I mean, we got wackos on both sides of the scales, guys. And I'm not even calling them wackos. I'm just saying that, you know, these group of people, they've been around a long time, and now they have an opportunity to be heard really loud and easily. You got to remember, they were kind of hiding from people for a long time. Now they're coming out in the open. And people like Lori Vallow, Melanie Gibb, all these people that are out there listening to this, well, they must be in support and believe these things that these guys are saying.
Out of gas, a lot of them by then, but they might get all the way to Littlefield and realize the Virgin River Gorge is closed or just impassable. And so they're going to just kind of pile up in that desert area.
So he's taken his books that he said were not real and saying that they're real here and telling people, this is what's really happening. We are going to be invaded. We are going to starve. We're going to need everything. Pack up, be prepared, and get your family prepared. There's going to be a war, and we need to be ready. And you really don't hear God's name too often. Then he goes into mentioning the fact or hinting that there are many of them that realize they're beginning to buy property in that area and gathering. But, you can take from it how you want to. Here you go.
This was off a real estate site, but it happens to show a lot of the places you're going to gather. So, Tokerville, Oregon, Hurricane, Virgin, Rockville, and Springdale, right there along that ridge, are going to be places of refuge where the saints will go ahead of time. Another key place will be Pine Valley, that region. There's an old, it's an old pioneer church that they still use there. And that will become sort of a headquarters. It has allowed great growth here that will actually house refugees, and that it is part of the Lord's plan that this area is developed and be able to accommodate these people. They might not have electricity or a lot of food, but they'll be able to have shelter and be safe. Because I feel that the majority of people that actually make it this far from California and Nevada are good-hearted people that have their purpose in life is to join the church and to make it here. Just wanted to mention a couple other camps. This is a Pine Valley camp. Camp Kolob is one where people gather and just up in the pines, a really safe area. I wanted to...
And this was a good opportunity to plug a book. Of course, he's, leading them to believe that you buy this book and you're going to have all the preparedness you need.
Talk about my fourth book. This is the last book in this series. When I first started the Times of Turmoil series, I thought it would just go on endlessly. Didn't really have an end point. But as I was writing it, at the end of this book, World War III ends, and the Spirit told me, this is the end of the times of turmoil.
Remember, Lori, and she has her family and friends with her during this conference, and they're all, obviously believing Lori. So you got Melanie Boudreau as well there. Her marriage is falling to pieces. Lori's marriage is going to fall to pieces. Melanie Gibbs' marriage had just fallen to pieces. Chad Daybell's marriage is going to fall to pieces. And people are making new connections. So Charles is off working. The kids are where? Who knows? And Lori is big time into prepping. She's been going to the temple. She's writing in her journal. She believes that she has these great experiences. She needs to get into a book, and she's about to get up with a guy that can help her do it. Lori's kids are struggling a lot here. This is truth. Colby's married out of the house. You got Tylee. She's not doing that great. Being focused on her school. Lori's not even caring. That will make 2 of Lori's children that will have to earn a GED. And then you have JJ that Charles is having to worry about 24/7. There's no doubt in my mind if Lori is taking care of JJ. Okay, let's listen to a little bit more of this. I know it's hard, but let's do it. Now, this is quite interesting because Jason Mal says that he didn't want nothing to do with these whack balls or nut jobs or whatever he called them. At least we know Jason Mal seems to believe in this preparing, because Chad's got this idea that he knows that Jason beat over a lot of the training of the military. This makes you wonder if Jason was really um, at that level to where he was talking with Chad about this at this time and saying, hey, yeah, I'll definitely be the one training the troops. So does this mean that they're going to, they're talking about guns and ammo and, special militia? And we've already heard Julie mention the fact that she's seen her husband traveling by horse with a gun in his hand. So this is some serious stuff.
In Rexburg, but somewhere here, there will be training, and I feel strongly Jason will be a part of that training and help to have that army ready to go as well. And so I don't know if you're going to do water training like this. I don't know what you got in mind, but what will happen that when that spring thaw comes, the coalition leadership will have gathered in Denver. I want to let you know that I know this. The church is true. This whole work is true. Every aspect of it is very important. These wonderful speakers that are going to share their piece of the puzzle today. And I hope you just absorb it. It's all so wonderful. I wanted to just talk a little bit about Mike and my new little series, Glimpses Through the Veil.
Okay, we're going to end it here. So on part 72, we're going to talk about the day that this recipe of disaster comes together. Don't forget to share our missing girls' faces today. There are many, many girls out there missing. And because their story's gone cold, there's nothing else to tell. Well, their story's dying. Thank you so much, guys, for being so support for this channel. Thank you so much to those that have given to the Patreon, Chasing a Murderer. And if you feel like you would like to donate and you like my work, you can head over to Patreon and look for Chasing a Murderer and donate once, or you can give monthly. I hope everyone is doing fantastic. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon.